everyone, and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for a post-match edition for St. Louis FC, and unfortunately the team could not carry over the momentum that they had picked up in that midweek matchup against the Charleston Battery. There was a lot of emotion going into that game. St. Louis FC put in a full 90 minutes and they just managed to pull out all the stops and come back from a 2-0 deficit and come back in that game. Unfortunately for them, things kind of caught up with them. They played a decent game for spurts again in this one, but they couldn't create much offensively. It's kind of been that same old story that we've seen time in and time out during this season. A lot of times it's been on home turf. This time it's on the away match. Just nothing really going creatively, offensively. And I give a lot of credit to the players that are out there. They're doing as best as they can, but they're faced with unenviable odds in terms of what they're faced with in terms of the team selection and everything. Mike Ambersley picked up a silly yellow card at the end. That ended up being the final yellow card before he had to miss some time, so he missed this game. They're still without Lynch. They're still without Nick Bibbs due to the suspension. They're still without Bouchou. There's still a couple players that are injured on this team. They're really putting themselves behind the 8 ball on this with a team that has struggled to score goals if and when they have ever been fully healthy. It's just not coming together right now, and it's looking less and less like this team is going to make the playoffs. Not an impossible task, but it is getting to be a mountain to climb now, because with 4 games left in the season, they're currently 6 points out. Well, you can sit there and say, oh, well, 6 points, that's only 2 wins. And you would be right, mathematically. But you also need some of the teams in front of you to lose, because there are 2 teams in front of St. Louis right now that are still below the cut line. So St. Louis right now is the 3rd team looking up in terms of trying to make the playoffs, whereas the Pittsburgh Riverhounds are currently the last team in the playoffs with 32 points. St. Louis currently has 26, assuming that the USL standings on the website are up to date. I would assume that they would be. But so it's going to be a difficult task. The one good thing that St. Louis has going for it going forward is that they do have some of their remaining games against teams that are above them in the standings, so that is going to help. If we quickly just kind of focus on the game, it was a bland game. It was boring at times. From a personal perspective, I do put a little bit of that on the announce team, and because I am an announcer, I'm a little bit jaded right now, because there are a lot of people that have been involved with USL teams that are employed, and I am not, and I feel that I'm better than them. But I mean, I'm still happy for them that they have jobs. I would not necessarily take jobs away from people, because I've had that done to me, so I know what it feels like. So I'm happy for them as people. It gets to be a little bit frustrating when you hear people who you do not feel are as talented as you are, but they are still in a better position than you are. Having said that, focusing solely on the game, again, St. Louis just could not create anything offensively. They had an excellent chance early in the contest. Also in the second half, Jamil Hardware had an opportunity that he should have done better with. He ended up taking a left-footed shot that went well over the crossbar. He could have done better with that. But outside of that, St. Louis just couldn't threaten at all. They had a little bit of possession here or there, but again, I'm giving credit where credit is due in terms of you can't put too much blame on this team right now due to the fact that they have so many players out injured. But just the system that is being run right now, whether it's the fault of the players or the fault of the coaching staff, that remains to be seen, and you can make your own conclusions regarding that. But there is just huge gaps right now. if you have one or two players forward, there's nobody back behind them to support them. So if you send a long ball up to the forward line, maybe they settle the ball down, but then all of a sudden they can't do anything with it because they're surrounded by defenders and nobody's coming up to support. The same thing could be said on the defensive end. If players run forward, all of a sudden the back line is caught by themselves, nobody coming back to help, and if they do, it's oftentimes too late. To me, that's what I blame on that first goal. There were too many players standing around. The defenders themselves were in the position that they probably thought they needed to be. Again, I fault the defenders a little bit because, again, similar to a couple weeks ago, you allowed a right-footed player to push the ball back towards the middle of the field instead of keeping it towards the sideline. But it was a good shot. There was nothing the goalkeeper could do. The defenders were in decent position overall, but just nobody checking back to help out. Once the shot was taken, just everybody was just standing there staring at the ball. What if it hits the crossbar? What if it hits the post? What if it's not necessarily a great shot and your goalkeeper makes a good save, and then all of a sudden you're standing flat-footed? There's just a lack of mental sharpness with this team as a cohesive unit. I've been saying that since I started doing these videos. Regardless of how well the team has played, regardless of how poorly this team has played, they have demonstrated a lack of cohesiveness, whether it's on the mental side or the physical side, what have you. They're just always separate units. You have your defenders, you have your midfield, you have your forward line. Regardless of what kind of formation they come up with, regardless of who's playing where, it just seems like they're not playing for each other at times, where there's just, as I said, huge gaps. You cannot have that. And again, I talked about it in the last video. Regardless of the fact that they had won, there just seems to be a fitness issue with this team, and that I do not blame on the players, because you can only force yourself to run so much. You need to be pushed in new ways by the coaching staff or the training staff. They are the ones that are getting paid to push the players to new levels and take them to that level that they need to be at to be able to perform at a professional level for 90 full minutes and not have those mental errors on the way due to the fact that maybe you're a little bit fatigued. And for whatever reason, that is just not happening right now. That being said, it was just kind of one of those games. I mean, you have to give St. Louis credit. They came out, I don't know who came up with this schedule format. Maybe games had to be moved around due to the cup schedule or something like that, but you can't schedule a regular season game on a Thursday and then another regular season game on a Saturday. Even if you had made it a Sunday game, that would be a little more acceptable than the current schedule was, because they have that to contend with in Europa League and then the Premier League or whatever. But no, most times those games aren't going to be held till Sunday. You need a day for travel and then maybe a day extra to train. Basically, St. Louis had to either get on the bus that night and travel however long, 16 plus hours to get over to Richmond, and they probably didn't spend any day training on Friday. They either traveled on Friday or they rested on Friday. Either way, it didn't end up working out. It's a ridiculous schedule. Having said that, the game is finished. It was disappointing to come out, but I understand why it happened. I mean, they spent so much energy coming back in that home contest. It was such a high that you could see maybe that something was going to happen in terms of a crash, just the way that this season has gone overall. But looking at the schedule as we continue to look forward, I continue to try to be positive and think that this team has enough in them to sneak in the playoffs. You look at the schedule right now, it's not looking favorable, but you do have teams that are above you to play against, so you got to get motivated for that. Unfortunately, the next match is going to be a week from today, August 30th. That is going to be at the Rochester Rhinos. Well, Rochester has only lost one game all season, and St. Louis has put itself in a position to where you probably need to take 12 points out of the next 4 games, which is not necessarily going to be something they can do. But so coming up with 3 points against Rochester is almost impossible. Right there, you have to look for at least 1 point because you have to get points in all the rest of these games, really. After that, it's a couple road games. You got the Harrisburg City Islanders. They're currently sitting with 31 points. Obviously, by the time St. Louis plays them, that's going to change. That's on the road, but St. Louis seems to play fairly well on the road, so maybe you can come up with a big momentum swing there September 6th. Then you come home for your last two games against the Charlotte Independents, another team that is below that playoff line but above St. Louis, and that would be another big game to where you could maybe kind of climb the ladder there. And then you finish up with the rivals in Louisville at home, and hopefully that will be an entertaining game just due to the rivalry aspect, and also due to the fact that the rivalry may be over next season. For those of you that don't know, there are rumors going around that St. Louis may be pushed over towards the Western Conference come next season due to the inclusion of the new expansion teams in the USL, both, I believe, of which are going to be in the East. I know Cincinnati for sure will be put in the East. I can't remember where the other expansion team is coming from. But St. Louis most likely going West. I doubt Louisville will go with them. So whether or not we actually get to see them again or not, that will remain to be seen. But again, it's disappointing. All of us as fans, we want the team to perform. We want them to perform consistently and consistently well. And they just haven't found that mix, that certain cohesion, that magic potion, if you will, that will allow them to perform at those kinds of levels. But still a lot to play for. As I said, 4 games left. You're 6 points behind right now, but you have to pull out wins in some of these games. You have to pull out wins. If you're only going to get 6 points out of the next 4 games, then obviously you have to hope that Pittsburgh somehow manages to get 0 points out of the remaining schedule that they have. That's completely unlikely, but not unheard of. So again, you've put yourself in a spot where basically you have to get 9 points at least out of the next 4 games. With the last 3 games, that's completely possible, but getting that extra point or so out of Rochester is going to be incredibly difficult. Maybe St. Louis FC will surprise us. Maybe they'll go on a big run here and just really say we're tired of all of this going on. We're tired of this guy doing the View from the Midwest, beating us up. So let's show him what's up. And I will greatly appreciate that, because I'm a season ticket holder. I want to be able to see some of these matches and see the team perform well. It's just disappointing when it's not quite there. Well, we'll still all be at the park, and I will see you all in a few weeks when the Charlotte Independents come to town. And obviously most of us will probably be watching on YouTube the next away matches as well. That is the View from the Midwest. What are your views on today's topic? What did you think about the game? Obviously, most of us are going to be pretty disappointed with the result, but give me some specifics about what you thought about everything overall. But that will wrap it up for today's show, and until the next time, I'll see you then.